But sometimes we've got to do the really hard work. And I have to tell you guys, we're talking about stress today, but the worst thing is not to be stressed. The worst thing is to be numb. We have to figure this out, and we have to figure out how to help kids release emotions. So this is another one of those cases where I'm going to use me as an example. In the perfect world, I would be here for 3 weeks. And I would process with all of you your life's pain, and I would talk about ways to prevent burnout. But given the less than perfect world, we're going to once again do me. So I told you, I'm 53 years old. I've had the happiest life of anyone I know, a score of 0, with the exception of this one 7 to 9 month period of extreme depression. And what I did as I was coming out of that depression is I changed my major. I became a developmentalist. I became a child development major. All my classes were in education for my master's. And I really began liking life again. And I went off to the reservation in South Dakota, where I lived with the Mini-Kosher Lakota Nation, first for 3 months, but then many months or years over a period of a decade and a half. And I saw devastation beyond compare and inspiration beyond measure. And then I went back to medical school, and I began working with street and homeless kids. And I saw like the man's inhumanity to man, like you can't imagine, how people will exploit other people. And then I went off, finished medical school, started residency. I've been at Children's Hospital now for 30 years. I will tell you that from the time I was a second-year resident, the day that I walked into a man's room, no, not a man's room, a father's room, after being told that I needed to ask him if he wanted to donate his two daughters' bodies after we had just declared them brain dead. And I went into him and I told him that we had just declared his daughters brain dead, and we wanted to know if he wanted to donate their organs. And he said to me, "Doctor, I need you to give me an hour or two. I just took my wife off life support next door." It took me 7 years to cry again. And now I am an adolescent doctor. I still see death rarely, but mostly I work with victims of economic, social, and racial injustice. My clinical focus is both inpatient and homeless kids. And do you know that because I work with homeless kids, did you know that half of my kids are gay by definition? By definition. I am angry about that, because those are kids who have been thrown away by their families. And now I'm this book author dude man guy who travels around the world telling other people how to raise their kids and how to put into place structures and processes to make kids healthier. And I've been doing this for about 17 years now while my girls were growing up. So am I a good father? I'm actually an awesome father, because when I'm present, I'm so present. But you know what happens? I come home and my wife wants to tell me something and I just am too tired to listen. So she's the one who suffers. What do you see here? Give me a word. It's not like a bunny rabbit. What's a metaphorical word? It's chaos. And if you know anybody who has a lot of chaos in their life because of what's going on in their life, and they don't have a box around it, they're nuts. Those are the people who say, "How was your day?" And they go like, "Oh," and they just explode. So what we do is we build a box around our chaos under the belief that we will deal with it later. So in the perfect world, I would have said to that father, I would have said, "I'd really like to process with you what it's doing to me to see your entire family die in the last hour." But that would have been wrong on so many levels, and I had to go next door to take care of another kid. Sound familiar? Right? So what you do instead is you put it in there, and then you build thicker walls. Thicker and thicker walls in order to be able to contain all of that stuff until this becomes what I call a leaden box. Why lead? Even a little bit of lead in your system is toxic, particularly to your intelligence. Lead is too heavy to lift, and even Superman can't see through lead. And when the most passionate themes of human existence are trapped inside of a leaden box, then every once in a while you explode. I've had the best life of anybody I know. My pain is that I bear witness to other people's pain. And the risk that it puts in me is of burnout, when all of my emotions get trapped without being able to let them out. For the kids I serve, This is their life. This is their life. And what we see is not what's inside the box. What we see is the explosions. Now let's tie together the whole day. From a trauma point of view, this is what's wrong with you. This is what happened to you. What I will also tell you is that what's wrong with you, we know factually that kids are more likely to get different diagnoses depending on their demographic. So when kids are explosive or reactive and they are white and middle class, they are most likely to get the diagnosis of ADD. And when you get the diagnosis of ADD, then you get medication and accommodation. And if you are Black, Latino, or Native, then you are more likely to get bipolar disorder, or my favorites, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, and intermittent explosive disorder. Diagnoses that should not be used in my mind at all. Okay? And what is society's ultimate resource that we give you when you have oppositional defiant disorder? Society's biggest investment. Prison. So we have to wake up. When we become trauma-informed and change these diagnoses, as we can now do as of May of 2014 with DSM-5, we stop labeling kids in terms of what's wrong with you and begin understanding what happened to them. It's a first step. Furthermore, if I'm a kid and I want to have my head stop spinning because there's too much stuff, the best thing I can do is smoke marijuana. If I'm a kid and I want to control when I explode so that it doesn't just happen randomly, but it happens in a way that I'm in control of, I'm going to drink alcohol. This explains so much. Explains professional burnout, trauma, drug use, and there's a better way for all of these things. What I call a Tupperware box. Tupperware. It's still a container, but the stuff inside it don't stink. You know what's inside, right? You know you can't eat it all in one portion. That's why it's in storage. You go through a process of emotional intelligence whereby you name what is inside. So this is Dorothy from South Dakota, Luis from the streets of New York, Mike, Native American from North Carolina, but I met him in Philadelphia. This is that father I was telling you about. This is this other girl who I helped die from cancer. This is maybe my own father issues. All of this stuff, but it's not spinning. I know what it is. I have categorized it. I know that I cannot deal with it all at one time. What I will do instead is I will break it down. I will make a decision about what I can handle at any one time, and I will release that story, that emotion, that experience. Open up my lid, use my emotional tools, let it out, and burp the box. That's burnout prevention. Stop letting it come into you and taking you away from you. Instead, organize it, control it, release it using your tools. What do your tools look like? Your tools look like crying. They look like laughing. Let's look at today. I made you laugh a lot today. I'm not funny. Seriously, this is a strategy. It's because this talk was so damn hard. And there's no way you could have made it for 7 hours if we didn't lighten it up sometimes. So you go like this to allow you to reboot. Praying, talking to someone who's earned your trust, writing, journaling. This is why I became a book author, was just to let this stuff out. I bore witness to so much pain. I had to believe there was a purpose, and it had to be to teach other people, to help other people. It had to be that. Art, music, dance, poetry, journaling, narratives, all of this. The bottom line is, you want to know how I feel, Dr. Ken? It's in my poetry. You want to know how I feel, Dr. Ken? It's in my art. Rather than letting it stay inside and own me, what I have done is I'm able to release it, and therefore it no longer owns me. All of these things. So at Covenant House, Pennsylvania, I give out art books the way other people give out Risperdal. Okay? And yet one more mountain into hills technique. Do you see that? The mountain is the stress and the overwhelming exposure of things you've seen in your life. The hills are the things once you've gone through emotional intelligence and you release it.